I would say never assume someone understands what's in your brain. I think that's the first thing.
Welcome. This is Unfolding, the show where I talk to creative business minds. My name is Marco Pfann, and today we have Nico Puertollano. And Nico is the co-founder of Rezonate from the US, an amazing motion design studio. And what we're going to talk about today is what they call the 4-day work week. Before we start, Nico, would you mind just giving us a quick introduction about who you are and what you do?
Sure. I am, again, as you mentioned, I am the co-founder of Rezonate. We help build brands and help customer loyalty through creating awe and wonder. And I work with my wife. So we started this company back in 2008. And so far we're here. Survived, the pandemic. And I think we finally hit that point, like we're understanding what we're doing. Hopefully.
You're understanding what you're doing. I gotta get into that.
Well, you know what it is? We started out as artists. We didn't really know anything about business. I mean, our whole thing was we just want to make cool stuff.
Right.
And then, for over 10 years, I felt like something must have been off, but we still kept going. And then I think the pandemic, kind of helped us kind of refocus and understand why are we doing what we're doing. Mm-hmm. And then from there, we got some consultants, and then next thing we're like, oh, I wish I knew that 10 years ago, Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
I kind of love your positioning. That's clear. It's crystal clear the value you provide, but also that's kind of creative too. So that's amazing. But we want to talk about the 4-day work week.
Yes.
A concept that you introduced into your company. Tell me more about that.
So in around, I think, the later half of 2020, well, actually, even before that, around after March, we started to lose certain people, mental health issues, or pretty much they decide, if we don't know what's going to happen, I think we're going a different route. And like I said, that's also the time we started to realize, we need to kind of really understand what we're doing in terms of business owners. And talking to our general manager and talking to some of the other colleagues from other companies, and we kind of decided, what if we just realize, even us as owners, we never had a weekend. When the weekend comes in, we were still working until Saturday, and then we have Sunday, and then we have chores to do. We have to do the laundry, we have to do groceries, and there's just no time. And we realized, if we're feeling this way, I wonder how our employees feel. So we kind of decided let's figure out how to do an actual 3-day, weekend. And because of, 2020 with the pandemic and the lockdowns, it was a way, I think, for us to kind of deal with some of the mental stress that people were having, of just either some of them were isolated, some of them were living with their parents. And now they're like, when they had dinner, they have to be having dinner with the family. So it disrupts things. So it helped, I think, for them to also manage in terms of, now I have a 3-day weekend. I would kind of know what to do in terms of whether it's whatever you have to do in your life, whether it's laundry, food, etc., or even just hanging out with family and friends. But also on a business end, we were thinking about it as doing animations and graphic design. We just realized, if there's a heavy project, most people go beyond, let's say, the 6 p.m. time. And then for us, we actually paid overtime for people.
Okay.
And we went kind of back and forth in that. Originally, we didn't have that, and then we instilled overtime. And then at some point, we started realizing, are people taking advantage of this overtime? Kind of the work during the day is a little slower. And I think a lot of that also came into play. And we're like, if you're going to stay anyway, let's just normalize it. So what we did was Fridays off, but you still have a standard 40-hour week.
Oh, okay. So, but that's cramped into 4 days now.
That is cramped into 4 days.
But before, I mean, you pretty much went from I mean, you worked Saturdays, your employees worked Saturdays too, right? So that was a 60-hour week anyway.
Yeah. And overtime, and so there's extra overtimes too. So
10-hour shifts each day.
It is 10 hours.
How do your employees cope with that? Do they like it? Is that hard for them?
So this is our second year I think it's more than 2 years because we did a full 2021 that way and 2022 is almost over. So I guess over 2 years. There was only one person that had a hard time with the early morning wake up. But I'm like, but you're at home. But that was the only thing. Everyone else liked it. Okay. Because of the weekend, it made them focus more on the work because they know they now have time versus this idea like, work ends at 5 or at 6. Now that they know they have those extra time, they're actually able to manage the work a little bit better during the day. And within that day, we also include lunch and dinner. So it's not like, so you have those 2 hours of break. And then you can also decide in terms of whether you want to not have your dinner and then have it at the end. So you're really going for like that 9 hours versus that 10. So the end part is a little flexible for them.
That means the breaks are with it. So 10 hours and breaks are included in those 10 hours.
Yes, they are included in there.
More like a 9 hour and no overtime. Do people still work overtime?
During the day, not too much. I would like to say almost no. But there are times where we do, if for some reason the project calls for weekend work or Friday, because now Friday's a weekend. And for us, the way we compensate, it would be like double pay for that day. Also, just to note, this is only for staff. Just to know, because people wonder. So, and people wonder how you balance. Well, there's also sometimes freelancers, so sometimes we can balance it out. If we are closed, meaning the staff is not around during Fridays, sometimes there is a freelancer to cover.
I mean, that's an idea everyone has at some point, right? So why did you actually take action? Why did you implement that? Was there something specific that happened, or?
Well, I think it was 2020. The lockdown,
Okay.
The lockdown did it. Talking to our staff in terms of how they were feeling, and also just for me and my wife trying to figure out we're working so hard, but I don't think we're working smart. It's like, what's the point of doing all this stuff if it's just work? When can you enjoy the fruits of the labor? So I think a lot of that was during that time that really kicked in.
So what changed?
Oh, I think the biggest bump was the fact that no one else in the world or our clients also work that way.
I don't know.
Right? So, currently none of our clients do. So that was the challenge, right? How to fill in that gap. Do we tell them straight out, oh, we just don't work Fridays, But I think, so that was one of the big challenges. And then we found a way to do workarounds on that. And I thought it was kind of smart, where Fridays would basically be the days where they can give their feedback. So Fridays won't be posting days. So we would post stuff on Thursday, and the expectations on Fridays is when either our clients will be able to give their feedbacks or comments. And then we can address those on Monday.
That makes total sense. Did it change the turnover rate that you had in your studio?
Well, so we have an interesting setup but generally I would say yes, because I think when we spoke to the team, the fact that they knew they had a longer day, they really knew how to manage themselves properly. Because sometimes, certain animations, it's like you're just kind of doing it and then you realize you hit a bump or there's some technical issue or something. So that extra time kind of helps them. But I think for us, we have a unique thing because we have two offices. We have one here in New York, and then we have one in Asia. So we work in terms of those time differences, and their end of day is our beginning day, and vice versa. So usually what happens is, so our process is we always post in the morning for our clients here. And we also, because of our setup, we solve the issues of when we get feedback at the end of the day. Because I remember working for other companies and we get feedback at 4 p.m. And the expectation is to either get something done later on that night or the next day, like during the day. But of course, it's you want to go home and you want to come back the next day and start working. You'll finish, towards the end of the day. But since we do have another office in, like, our staff in Asia, they get to do the work of any kind of feedback which was given here in New York, at the end of day, and they could churn it out. So then we post in the morning.
You actually have 2 shifts. That's like almost a 24-hour workload.
Almost, yes.
Almost.
Yeah.
So how did you come up with the idea to open, I think in Manila, right?
Yeah, it's in Manila.
Manila.
So after working in New York for like maybe 3 or 4 years, I moved to Manila because that's where I met my wife. And then we started the company there. And from there, I kind of got tired of Manila, and also just the challenge of actually the industry was a little challenging. It wasn't what I was used to over here. I felt like there was less opportunities. So I said, let's come back. But since we already built an infrastructure there, let's go back to New York. I still have all my connections, and let's start another company there slowly. Our first 2 years was so grueling. I can't even explain. I don't think, my wife and I slept because we were trying to figure out how do we work back and forth. The team wasn't used to, let's say, just even the culture of America and things like that. And we had to, and at the end of the day, we would take notes and feedback and decipher them for them. We would stay up until like 3 a.m, kind of explaining things. And we would stay up to kind of, really manage and look at the work and what they're doing. Because that's what they were used to when we were there. We would be there, you would go over, can I just see the work in progress? But now that we were away, working remotely to some degree, it took 2 years to kind of get them to a place where they felt confident, understand our nuances in terms of like either direction or what we were looking for.
So what's your biggest learning in that process? Like, this is a lot of around creative direction, leading people, giving them responsibilities.
Yes.
What's your biggest learning around that?
Never assume, hold on, sorry. I would say never assume someone understands what's in your brain. I think that's the first thing. It's like you have to understand that they may not understand it, and you have to kind of explain things in a way, and not that you understand it necessarily, but more objectively. Give references, I think, is also strong in terms of kind of not just verbalizing things. It's always good to have some kind of reference, so it's easy for them to understand. Also, our biggest learn is it's definitely harder, especially, and I guess now we're working remotely, right? It's really hard to have discussions when you don't see anything in front of you. So even having a sketch of an idea or a layout or a composition, even if it's like stick figures, helps a lot to have a conversation versus not having that at all.
So how do you solve that? Do you write emails? Do you have Zoom calls? Do you?
Oh my gosh! We've done so many. So we went through so many iterations of these things. So our current process really right now is just. So we use this app now. We used so many different apps before, but we are finally using this thing called Milanote. And that kind of helps us to put in all our references, sketches, and we can actually draw on that platform. Then we would get on a call. Like we would either, we use Google Meets. And then from there, we just kind of discuss. It's almost like it really does feel like we're in the same room to some degree. It's like almost like it's like a virtual whiteboard to some degree. And you can just kind of point and, this is what I'm talking about. You see like what this references looks like. You see how like the shadows being done this way. So that's kind of how we communicate in terms of feedback, or even in the beginning of a project, if we're doing a pitch, in terms of how do we conceptualize something.
But that also includes a lot of preparation time, right? It's not like I open the browser, look for something, and then look, this is what I mean. So you actually, you have to be prepared, right?
Oh yeah. It's not, you can't just go on there and be, and we've told them this too. Don't get me wrong. In the beginning, it was kind of a free for all. Like, imagine yourself in, when you're in an office, you just get everyone into the office and you're huddling or like you're brainstorming, right? There's nothing on the table. And even that we've learned, it's just more efficient before you go to any of those meetings that you have something to show and to discuss versus just coming up with an idea on the spot. So when we were physically all together, actually that's what we started doing too, just because of time. And then we kind of took that once we started working remotely, and it really helped. It made the team realize when they come on the table ideas, they have something, they have some references that they want to show, and not just, verbally this, I saw this movie and they did this. Not helpful. So when you get on the table, whether it's virtual or literally on the table, everyone is prepared. And they're prepared in a sense that, and we talk about this with the team, that it's very helpful if you come in with some solutions or with some concrete like ideas on how to execute or whatnot versus questions. Like, can I do this? Are we able to do this?
Also, be a little bit more suggestion more.
Yeah, be more proactive about it, and then we can discuss whether it's actually feasible to do those things.
I like that. So that's more. You actually give them responsibility, but also freedom. Like they can call some shots, but they also have to. That's amazing.
We also had to learn on how to give them autonomy, and that was the big thing.
Okay. Sounds straightforward, but now you're talking to people in Asia, right? And I've worked a lot in Asia,
right?
That's not really. I mean, you're from Asia anyway, or your wife is from Asia. This is not the typical mindset.
2 years. That's why I mentioned earlier. It took over 2 years to get to that point. Yeah, you're absolutely correct. This idea of being autonomous and the idea of being able to sit on the table and give an idea, especially in Asian culture, very challenging, very challenging. And I think it took a long time for them for trust on us that, is big.
It's around trust. So it's kind of trust that you establish. Is that the key to the whole thing?
I think there's a little bit of like kind of rearranging kind of some furnitures in their brain of thinking that because I think the fear is either there's a fear of sounding that they don't know and that they'll get ridiculed, right? So we had to make sure that they understand there's nothing that you'll say that will make you look dumb or not smart or you don't know what you're talking about. But if you don't say anything, that's worse because we can't read your mind. And we're not here to judge you on what you say, but we just want to know, we need to hear it and you need to hear it too, in terms of what you're thinking in your head, verbalizing it. And it took a while for people to start to trust us that we won't laugh at them or look down on them or make them feel insecure of maybe them feeling they don't know enough.
Okay, that took you 2 years, which is still amazing, I believe.
It's still working when we get new people, but generally...
Yeah, that was my question.
Yeah.
How fast can you onboard new people now?
That's a good question for our general manager. So what we do now is usually we start off with interns over there. I would say... usually it takes around 3 to 6 months.
That's good. That for any freelancer, it takes like 3 to 6 months to get them to the.
Yeah, just a caveat. It takes them 3 to 6 months to understand the processes we have in place, etc. I think it takes a little bit more for them to really start to open up. It also depends on their upbringing. But what my wife and I do is we try to talk to them, also outside of work, meaning just like catch ups so that they also feel comfortable in terms of just being able to express, their thoughts. And our general manager, after around 2021, she decided to, do at least half-hour conversations with everyone in the team throughout the week. Okay. Just a catch up, just to get them used to being asked questions, that they're not used to. Just have them be able to share. Just to have that practice of like
opening
up to, let's say, your superiors as they would feel, because there are tiers in Asia, right? So just to have that, And here's a good one. So in Asia, depending which country, but in the Philippines, for example, like they're so used to, if you have a superior, you either call them sir and then their name. Like they would always call me like Sir Nico. Like I'm not a knight, you know what I mean?
That's amazing.
Or like ma'am or whatnot.
Yeah.
And we tell them all the time, you don't have to say that. You don't have to say that. But for some, it's so ingrained in the culture, they feel very uncomfortable by not doing it. But there's some where some of our team members finally found, finally was able to get out of that barrier, and that's taken away. And it makes them feel a little bit more closer to us in terms of a colleague versus just a boss, per se, and for some, there's still that, more casual relationship, but they still have ingrained of having to like say sir. There's still a little bit of that, but it's a slow process. But that's one of those examples of like how they're seeing hierarchies and etc.
So you also have a team in the States.
Slowly, we currently have a producer on staff. Usually we get like freelancers in terms of an art director or an animator or designer, depending on the project. But that's what we're gearing up. So our next phase.
So your whole creative team is in Manila at the moment.
I would say the bulk of the guys would execute, because sometimes like either me or my wife would do some of the pre-work. But slowly we're trying to take that away, and we're slowly trying to find. So next year the goal is to get a art director, a staff here in New York. So we're doing kind of like a slow process of getting our staff here.
The quality on your page is top tier, right? It's like the quality of your portfolio, the work you do, the animations, top tier. Just from my own experience, getting that quality out of Asia. I'm not saying Asia is
2
bad,
years. Again, 2 years. You're forgetting about this 2 years of no sleep and like, staying up with them and like going through this stuff and like really pushing them. And just those first 2 years, like we have, currently we have leads, a staff, and they've been with us for, more than 5 years already. So we've been really bombarding them in terms of how things should be done. How do you quality control the work? What do you look for? So it was like constant bombardment. And then when we finally left and moved here, we had to even like increase that even more so that they can really have the confidence, like, okay, I understand what they're looking for. I need to make sure like these kinds of animations have this. So we have specific people that we feel we've trained. So that's the key thing. We've trained them to get to a certain point. And then hopefully they start to cascade that with the other teams, like especially when you have new people or new hires.
Is that true that it's easier to find great talent in Asia than it is in the States?
My personal experience, I would say it depends on what you're looking for.
Animators?
Animators, I feel in Manila is a lot more challenging than it is here. I think in terms of, I feel in the Philippines, there's a lot more illustrators. And, it's interesting because I think Philippines has an interesting history because they were known for animation back in the 90s. All the filmation stuff, like that's all done in Manila. If you look at the stuff like for He-Man and things like that, a lot of, and even Disney, a lot of stuff was farmed out to Manila. And something happened where that industry, and there were a lot of like, big studios, and a lot of them disappeared. A lot of it started to farm out in different parts of Asia, whether it's Malaysia, etc. And now, they have a good industry in terms of animation over there as well. And because of that, and what happened, I think in the 2000s, a lot more illustration started to come into play and graphic design. So there's a lot more illustrators over there. There are people who do want to, do animation. There is a handful. It's hard because a lot of them are also being used by other companies or they're already in staff. So it gets challenging when you want to grab them because they're already taken. So in terms of like pools of freelancers, in terms of like artists, especially for animation, I feel like we have a better pool here. That's like quick, and they can do it. Even if they're fresh grad, like they know how to do something. They just have to understand like the processes of, like, let's say your company, etc.
Right.
Where I feel like over there's still a little bit of a learning curve, especially with working with teams, etc. Like that. But that's just my current experience. We do have a handful of freelancers that we work with, but it took us, around 10 years to find them and keep working with them so that they know how we work. So we can have that nice solid relationship with them.
So, quick summary. You have a 4-day work week. You don't work Fridays, and the bulk of your team is at the other side of the world.
Currently, yes.
How do you explain that to your clients?
So most of our clients know that. There are some clients that don't know that. It depends on who we're working with. If we have a direct client, we're open about it. We just tell them, because it doesn't make sense to hide. I mean, if you look at the work is created by my team there. So, there's no reason for us to hide. There are times when we work with other production companies and, let's say like we're whitelisted as that, for that company. Usually that's like nothing is mentioned, usually, since it's not our client technically. So right, it's being farmed to us. But yeah, that's kind of how we deal with it. And most of our clients that meet us from before, they know, and it's also on our website that we have 2 offices.
But one thing you still, and tell me a little more about that. I know you have something like team bonding experiences. How do you call them?
Oh, so there's 2 things that we do. We have, team building. Again, that's, I think for any very general corporate stuff, if you have a big corporate company, the idea of you go out and you do
drunk.
Sometimes at night, but during the day, like there's games and stuff, whether it's trust games or ways to cooperating, that kind of stuff. So we do that once a year. And then another part of the year, we do just regular, like a team outing where it's just, around December time, let's all just celebrate and all the work that we've done and just chill out together.
So that's team building.
That's more like team outing. The team building is like another time. That could be during the middle of the year, where you just take a weekend and just kind of, it's almost like a, general assessment of like, okay, we need to kind of bond and understand teamwork. And sometimes there's workshops just to understand what it means as teamwork, so it's a little bit different. It's a lot more organized. There's a program, etc., kind of on what to do. The outing is just, okay, look, we're going to take you out. Let's go to like a beach, all of us, for like a weekend, and let's just hang out.
Yeah.
You're like, this is impossible. What are you talking about? This is not real.
So you're pretty much you fly for the weekend to the Philippines, hang out on the beach, or maybe
not a weekend. Like we'll stay there for like maybe like almost a month.
That's great. That's amazing.
But for us, like for me and my wife, we take that opportunity to like go to Singapore, talk to our clients over there and show face.
Okay.
So we have other clients within Asia.
How do you acquire them? Do you get them from people in Manila, or do you acquire them? How do you get those people in Asia?
Sure. Some of them were when we were there. So it was like old relationships, and we're just kind of keeping tabs and working with them. We have a sales team, a marketing sales team in Manila, and they're the ones who kind of reach out in the Asia region.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of how that happens. And we're doing, we're using LinkedIn also, but LinkedIn doesn't really work in Manila, but LinkedIn kind of works within, we feel like within, let's say Singapore or like other parts of Asia, but not necessarily Manila. They prefer Facebook. I don't know.
Got it.
But that's the outreach,
If you could, I mean, it's an amazing system you have. Like, it's a great culture, and you have the double challenge of actually having the people. You care really about the culture, about the people, much more than others do, and then they are also on the other side of the world. So this really is amazing what you're doing. if you could, would you prefer to have everyone here?
Yes and no. Because I see the advantage of playing with the time zones. And if we had everyone here, it would be the same. We won't be able to offer anything different than anyone else here. It's the same thing. You get your feedback at the end of the day. Everyone's stressing out, et cetera, et cetera. So, before the pandemic, our whole plan really was to do exchange, kind of like an exchange plan where some of them get to come here, experience what it's like even more, and they can bring it back, but also get that experience of working with people here directly. We're slowly working in that as well. And it's funny you also mentioned about culture. Just since we started this as artists, I mean, one of the reasons we also wanted to start our own company is because we saw what we didn't like in the studios that we were working at, and we wanted to see if we can actually make something better. And when we did, one of the first things we did is actually made a handbook that talks about the culture that we're building. So we have a handbook. So anyone who comes in, we have this handbook that explains our history, our vision, like what we're looking for, and the culture that we're building.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
So you really put some effort into this. I love it. Amazing.
I'll share that with you.
Please share with me. I would love to see that. That's amazing. So, Nico.
Yes.
Last question. I love this question. I will ask this everyone. What's your message to your competitors?
Ooh, that's a good one. What is my message to my competitors?
You can decide if you...
No. I think I see my competitors really as colleagues now, versus before. And I think what I've learned in 2020 is that, as much as you can, rather than holding and keeping secrets or how you do things, I think it's better to share. And I think once you're able to share, let's say, your processes or what you do, not necessarily secret sauce, right? I mean, that's your own, but just being able to share those things, I think will help the industry and grow, either as individuals, as your artists, or as an owner. It kind of helps lift people up a little bit,
to mature the industry, like, I really like what you said in the beginning, to understand the clients, the problems, things like that.
Yeah.
So great message, Nico. That was Nico. I'll still love your 4-day work week. And if I ever decide to come back as an animator, you'll be the first one I look for.
All right. It could be marketing, it could be consulting too. Many options.
4-day work week. Thanks for your time. I want to be respectful of your time.
Yes.
That was a great call today. And looking forward to our next one. Thanks.
Yes, same. Thank you so much.
That was Nico from Rezonate, and we talked about their 4-day work week model and how they built a creative team across different time zones and across the entire globe. My name is Marco Pfann, and I hope you're going to join me in the next episode where I again unfold some creative business minds.